my portfolio. Pimp my portfolio.
This is a segment where we get a community member to submit their portfolio so that one of our experts can cast their eyes across and hopefully provide some ideas on how to improve it. In the studio today, we have Luke Larrative from Seneca. Luke, welcome.
Bryce, Ren, good to be here.
And online we have Rhythm. Rhythm, welcome. Thank you for submitting.
Thank you, boys, for having me. Happy to be here.
We are really excited for this one. Off air, Luke said that this is probably one of the
I've actually got something
ones.
usly to say, Russ.
got something useful. So Ren,
setting expectations high.
Bring my best for Rhythm, bring my best.
Why don't you take us through Rhythm's portfolio?
Okay, so it's a portfolio predominantly of ETFs and some managed funds. I'll just go in order of largest portfolio weighting to smallest. So we start with the Vanguard MSCI International Shares ETF, about 30% of the portfolio. Then we've got NDQ, the BetaShares Nasdaq 100 at 18%. The next two sit at about 15% each. We've got the Vanguard FTSE All World ex-US ETF, and then we've got a bit of leverage in the portfolio, the ProShares Ultra Pro QQQ. 3x leverage Nasdaq. Bryce is salivating at that.
I did used to have that in my portfolio.
All right, well, we're not here to talk about you, Bryce. So, and then some of the smaller holdings, we've got the Nifty Next 50 Index ETF, which is India, and then the Nifty 50 India Index, and also a Kotak large and mid-cap fund in India. So together, that's a bit shy of 15% of the portfolio in India. Oh, sorry, and we've 16. Got the India small cap fund. So together, 16% of the portfolio in India. Two small holdings to close it out, the BetaShares Australian Technology ETF and the BetaShares Global Cybersecurity ETF. So,
wow,
Luke, that's the portfolio. You said you've got something useful to say. About time we say.
Don't mind this one, actually.
Hold on. Before you start giving us feedback, Rhythm, just tell us about the thinking behind the portfolio, how it came to be.
So for me, it was all about getting the asset allocation and diversification across global. And I thought US has been performing well in the past. And I feel the most of the returns that have come even in the downtime and the good times has been from the US. So I wanted to have the US exposure. So that's why if you see my portfolio, around 60% is US. But I was more aggressive on the tech sector because they have really performed well. And I also believe top 10 companies of tech is something that is driving the global market in US. So that's why there is that NDQ, which I am aggressively going into. But also I came across recently about the TQQ, which is the leverage one. And I thought, okay, that's a good one to actually increase your exposure a little bit as well. So that's why I've started adding that into my portfolio. And then I wanted to get some balance. So that's why it's more of ex-USA globally. That's why VEU. And from India's perspective, because I'm originally from India, I thought of having some money in the Indian market as well.
Love it. Makes sense.
I actually think it actually does make sense. The point I wanted to bring up today, and if you want to have exposure to India, pick some Indian ETFs. That's great. You want to have this US exposure. It all makes sense. The thing I wanted to point out was kind of the gross exposure to the Nasdaq here. So you've got kind of 65% exposure to the Nasdaq. And the real thing I wanted to talk about is actually this thing called volatility drag. So this is the idea that because that QQQ is daily rebalanced, it can kind of cause unintended consequences when it comes to leverage. So we'll kind of just work through an example and then we can kind of talk about it. But like on an ungeared basis, if the market falls or the Nasdaq falls 10%, your holdings are going to go from $100 to $90. To get back to 100, you need to make more than a 10% return, right? So that's 11%. Kind of, we all understand that as a principle. On a 3 times geared basis, it's going to be $100 down to $70, which means you need to make a 42% return to break even, or on a geared basis, you need to recover 14%. So the difference between that 14% recovery and that 11% recovery is this kind of volatility drag that you've created in your portfolio. And that's the extra return you have to earn to get back to par because of your gearing. It's not just it's not the 3 to 1 that everyone counts. It's the 3 to 1 plus essentially 10% in this case, but because we've used the 1/3. But anyway, by the by, there's an extra return. Everyone can work that out. It's basic maths, but nobody kind of realizes it. Yeah. The difference between these daily rebalanced geared products, which have advantages, you don't get margin calls, you don't have to worry about going and getting a loan, cheap debt, blah, blah, blah. you have cons as well, and the cons are that you have these volatility drags, which can be cheaper than the cost of the benefits, or it could be more expensive. So I think everybody gets very excited about having no margin calls and no cost of capital.
Yeah.
But it's not true. There is. It's implicit in the product.
And I think particularly with a product like TQQ, which is synthetic underneath.
Yes.
And so it's made up of underlying derivatives and whatnot. And particularly it's a daily rebalance. There are products here in Australia that the leverage is actually the fund manager going out and borrowing money. Yep. So that volatility drag is less pronounced because they're not needing to rebalance every single day. There is an element of it because they're rebalancing over a longer period of time, but it's less sort of pronounced. So I think, particularly products TQQQ where it's a daily rebalance, and when markets are particularly volatile, then you could get in a bit of trouble
and I think everyone at the moment, I feel like a lot of the Equity Mates community came on to investing during COVID, and so they've pretty much just seen the market go up and to the right. And, whilst markets do go up, that's what they do most of the time, leverage works both ways. And I would just caution people with, getting carried away with leverage, particularly if your entire investment thesis, as sort of Rhythm's outline, is just built around historical returns.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't really understand, which I've covered before on here and other places, how to read returns, in my opinion. They get caught up in recency bias and they don't understand what the journey actually looks like. They just see 12% per annum and then invest all their money in that.
So if we were to bring it back to Rhythm's portfolio, if, let's say COVID, I'm not sure when you started investing Rhythm, but let's say COVID is a time period, past 5 years, NDQ has done about 100%, 108%.
What's the CAGR of that? I don't know.
I don't have that, but just stay with me. So 108%. TQQQ has done 208%.
Yeah.
So Rhythm's thinking, Luke, you might be academically smart, but I've got 100% more returns because of this. So contextualizing it back into the portfolio, because I think it is important to understand how these products work. If Rhythm wants a bit of spice in the portfolio, a bit of leverage, how would you suggest he builds it in a way that sort of manages the risk associated with these products?
I've got no issue with it. I would just think about your gross exposure at all times.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? So it's the same way if you're a long short manager or 130-30 manager, you're always thinking about gross exposure. And I would be, massively focused on that. And I would think that any portfolio shouldn't have 65% gross exposure to the NASDAQ.
So Rhythm, did you have any other questions that you wanted for Luke when it came to positions in the portfolio?
So, okay, with considering whatever Luke has said and you guys have shared, what changes would you say if I have to rebalance? I know you talked about growth and exposure, but other than that, say if I want to decrease my position in TQQ and just purely go NDQ as well, will that be a safer bet, or keeping a little bit skin in the game with the leverage, but how about the other side of the portfolio is looking for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think the premise of what you're doing as a principle is good. So you go, VGS is my broad-based market exposure. I don't know why people bother doing anything else often. I just think that's a really good product and people should use it more. And if you don't want to have that much money in the US, because it's my view that emerging markets are going to outperform, which they've started to do, which I've been talking to you guys about for a year or two, the VEU product you can just tilt your portfolio, 70% in VGS and 30% in VEU or whatever your mix might want to be. And then if you've got this sort of satellite approach with India, maybe a bit of tech stuff here in Australia, maybe some specific tech NASDAQ, that's fine. Just kind of isolate it to whatever the satellite percentage is, Rhythm, and then think about, okay, well, how much of my budget do I want to put towards NASDAQ versus everything else? And then, okay, I've decided that I want 30% exposure to NASDAQ. Okay, great. You can get that two ways. You can have 10% in the QQQ, or you can have 30% in NDQ. Now, you might decide I'd rather have 10 in the QQQ and use the other 20 to get some more other stuff exposure that you're interested in. I don't mind. I think it's more just about not getting carried away with huge overweights in, NASDAQ's great, but essentially it's 6 stocks or 7 stocks that you're really buying. So it's not, if you're trying to do what the boys here are kind of preaching, in the church of thematic ETFs that we're sitting in now.
No, we're the Church of Index ETFs.
In this room, only in this room.
And then adjacent, there's a little house of thematic ETFs.
Okay, got it, right. The cult of thematic on the side, got it. So, yeah, I would just be thinking about it like that, essentially. So
Yeah, nice.
Nice. Anything else that comes to mind, Rhythm?
One last question from my wife, actually, just before she
Mate,
left.
these are the most important questions. This is the most important one we've done all day.
So she had a question in terms of, she's also started investing recently and she's also thinking from long-term perspective. What would you say would be an ideal asset allocation for someone who is not so familiar with all the equities that is happening around, and what are the asset types that she can consider?
I would just be like, if it's for the very long term and volatility is not a problem, and she's just going to keep sort of adding to it every month, like a VGS product that you're already familiar with would be fine, or equivalent. I'm sure there's Beta Shares and SPDR and all the other providers, or you could just have a look at those. Otherwise, a multi-asset ETF that sort of align with her goals, a Vanguard balanced, a Vanguard growth, a Vanguard high growth type product is totally perfect for that kind of thing. Otherwise, you can sort of recreate. I mean, the whole equity mate community, you guys love recreating these things in individual ETFs for, I don't know why, your own entertainment or something.
So we can control our asset allocation. If I can jump in, Luke.
Please, Ren. Please.
I mean, Rhythm, the two first lines in your portfolio, like that makes sense as a core portfolio. VGS, which as Luke said is about 70% US, and so then complementing it with VEU, which is all world ex-US. Like, if you just dollar cost average into those two, you get like indexed global exposure at a low cost, and you can just dollar cost average in that for as long as you want.
You're getting enough like spin away from the US, which kind of is more aligned with probably how the global economy works rather than just how the stock markets of the globe work.
Yeah, and if you want it even simpler, as Luke said, there's like DHHF or VDHG, which is just like an all-in-one global ETF, but they allocate their weightings so it's not so heavily in the US. So yeah, the problem these days is there's an overwhelming number of choice, but the dirty little secret is a lot of those choices look very similar under the hood. So yeah, there's no bad options out of the ones we've just said.
And my only other comment would be like, stop looking at historical returns. It's the worst way to pick investments. There's lots of ways to build a portfolio, but historical returns is not going to help you.
Says the bloke who's celebrating returning 40% over the past 12 months.
It's a hard life, boys. It's a hard life. What can I say?
Now, Luke, your microphone's fallen off the table. You're holding it here. So
Rhythm, I'm working the biceps for you here, mate, at the same time.
If
you're not watching on YouTube, that's why you should watch.
I think that's the time to wrap it. But Rhythm, thank you so much for submitting today. We really do appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me, boys. Have a good day.
Thanks, Rhythm. If you would like to submit to Pimp My Portfolio, head to equitymates.com/contact. There's a form there and you can get Luke to have a look at your portfolio. But Ren, we'll leave it there. Pick it up next week.
Sounds good.
I will say this about investing. Everything you do learn is cumulative. What I learned at 20 is useful.